This edition of the Platform is brought to you by Roomettes, the fastest way to create the illusion of 3D interiors in your model railroad structures. And by Nick's Trains, home of the Decoder Buddy. When it comes to making DCC decoder installations and upgrades easy, Decoder Buddy is your best friend.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Platform. This is the podcast for the rail fan and the model railroader alike. We are coming to you from the North Shore of Lake Ontario along a very, very busy rail corridor, hosting between 40 and 50 trains a day. In addition to our 3 studio cameras, we also have a Railstream webcam attached to our station, affording us a wonderful view of the passing rail action, all those beautiful VIA trains and CN freight trains going by. You can also tap in to that Railstream webcam by going to visit our friends at Railstream at railstream.net. My guests today are no strangers to the regular viewers. I'm back today with RTC's JZ. Or JZ.
Let's go with JZ. Canadian, yeah.
Let's go with JZ, and we'll do the Canadian thing. It'd be great to have JZ on the show, but I don't think he would have much to add to the railroad
not
content.
to my knowledge.
And DJP, David Parker, is back with us. Both men, 30 plus years in railroading. Guys, last time we were together, we were talking about your journey through dispatching and RTC. We talked about OCS, MBS, and CTC. I wanted to ask you something that I've been thinking about. I was 12 or 13 when I saw my first cabooseless train, or vanless, as we say here in Eastern Canada. And I'm wondering how that changed the game from the dispatching office. I think CP ran their first vanless train on the London division around 1989. Joe, I'm not sure when CN would have done that, but do you remember?
I think it was around, I'd say probably around 89-ish as well.
Same time.
Yeah.
I hear our third guest. Of course, our third guest is the railway itself. It's never an interruption. It's a welcomed interruption, and here comes, what do we got, guys? VIA? It's eastbound, and it's rumbly.
It sounds long.
Freight train.
The double stack phenomenon. Remember it was just North America, and now they have double stacks in Australia. They have them in India.
In where?
India.
Oh, really?
You go on YouTube, they got
in India.
In India,
double stacks.
They got double stacks. Yeah. It's cool, those Australian ones, because they'll have a coach. Because the crew, it's so long distance in some places over there.
Okay, that's neat.
The crew just sleeps and then the other crew takes over. Just like long haul aircraft,
Wow. CN owns a lot of their own containers now.
Yeah.
You really see a lot of different CN paint schemes on containers.
I think a lot of it is road salts eating them up on the trucks, so that's probably why they need replacements.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that one. Those are new.
We saw one the other day. It was something Hawaii.
Oh yeah?
It's some container company out of Hawaii. They got containers now.
I told you it was long. Open door on that container. I hope it doesn't swing open all the way.
I don't think, is this guy stopping, or is he a long
Should be a
extended run?
It should be a DP. I'm thinking this might be 148. It's about one.
No, it's a little early. If
Yeah.
you're just coming through Georgetown.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
It's probably one of those that come off the ballast up 106 or something. Is it 106?
108. Tail end DP and dynamic braking.
Yeah.
We were talking about vanless operation, but before I get to that, the intermodal train going by reminded me. Are intermodal trains still given priority over manifest freights? Is that still a thing?
Yes and no. Two things that play a role in it: crew time and the terminal that's going to handle it. If they got room for it. Sometimes they're congested, or work programs, so sometimes the intermodal trains do get staged, or
Okay.
they're not rushed to get to where they're going. Those are two big things. And also for the run-through trains that change off, like at Doncaster, that go north or come from the north, some intermodal trains that go that way do get staged for oversighting southbounds coming down the Bala. So they'll, if they're too early at Doncaster, they just end up sitting and waiting anyway. So it's a bit of a prioritization in terms of where the train's going, is if it's going to fit into the operating plan.
That depends.
But saying that though, it's not so bad on the Kingston sub, because you got. But once you get north of on the ballast sub in the single track territory, you've got nowhere to park them. So
they gotta go.
Trains in all directions, even if they're intermodal or just general freight. If it's a 305 or something, he's got to keep going. Or
they run windows, so you usually run them in packs. 3, 4 oversighting one direction, and with the directional running zone, with the CP and CN, they'll run oversighting southbounds down CN, and the northbounds up the CP.
They had designated meet points, so you got like Brecon East, which is an oversighting siding, a long siding. Then you got the is it Medora? Anyway,
it's been a while since I looked at that.
It's been a while. But then you got the directional running zone, which is like 100 and whatever mile siding basically.
In northern Ontario, central and northern Ontario, there's a dual running zone.
So there's a meet plan that's set up. Like the chiefs will set up the meet plan with their managers, and it's just up to the RTC to implement.
I'm just trying to explain to the audience what we mean by this zone about the one-way running.
Yeah.
So all the northbounds, they go north on CP, and south on CN.
Between Parry Sound and
CN and CP have implemented that in a couple of areas out west as well. They've implemented that, and I think that was once touched upon between CN and CP, between North Bay and on the Chalk River and Beachbrook subs. They were contemplating that as well.
It's sort of poor man's double track, right?
It's kind of sort of utilizing the assets of both railroads, and in this case here, it's for these super long trains
that will not fit
pretty much
in
you
the siding.
avoid the meets, but then you run into problems with that because you're always fighting about CN wants their train to go first because it's got to get to
the next
it's got to
zone
get to
or
Brecon
whatever
for the 3 trains that are coming north.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, then CP's got a train that they want to run, but it's only going to go to South Parry for their oversighting trains, and they want to hold it. So it's like
You're never going to please everybody.
You'd think it would be easy, when they first did directional running zone, they had a little pamphlet came out. Basically, it said the agreement was first come, first served. But
sounds fair.
That was a while back now.
Quickly scrapped.
Yeah. Because, all the CPs were oversighting and all the CN were oversighting. And the thing with the ballast hub is, for the longest time, they didn't have intermediate signals. So you got a 10-mile block. That train has to get out of that block before the next train gets a signal into that block. Like it was a huge block.
Mm-hmm.
There was just the approach, and that was it. And the approach signals were so close to the siding,
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it. I was like, no intermediates. You got these huge blocks and no intermediates. It's one train, and then wait 15 minutes for it to go through. The next train pulls up, stop. The next train pulls up, stop.
So
then they all move up a square.
So any efficiencies that they tried to create were lost because of the signal system and the blocks.
Yeah, it was an old signal system. I remember the first time we went on a road trip up the Ballast Hub. I'm like, where'd you get these signals from? Apparently they're little square signals. They were British signals. They looked like subway signals.
Oh, okay.
And it was way up in the north of Parry Sound, the signals. It was like the original CTC signals.
Again, that falls, the onus again falls on the RTC to make it work.
Yeah.
So basically, if you're going to be running like a 15-minute block, it's the guy that's sending the train into the territory. Well, sort your trains out, run what you got to, start up that 15-20-minute block, and then you can keep everything moving, not go stop and go. So if you got a train you got to squeeze through there between the trains to make things happen, you do it, and then once you establish the pattern, everything moves smoothly. You don't bunch everybody up and then stop and go. So if you got to make a move or something like that, that's how we always did the meets and that. Plan your meets accordingly so everything flows smoothly, rather than rushing somebody up and wait and
hurry up and wait.
Well, like Joe was saying, the Intermodal, Brampton Intermodal, a bit. It's so busy there that you'd get a train coming south, and your crew is short on time, so you want to get them to bit, and they can't take them. So you end up parking them at the Humber, or now you've lost a main track, and the crew is gone. And this 10,000-foot train's just sitting out there.
Waiting for a fresh crew.
Waiting for a fresh crew, or waiting for BIT to say they're going to bring it in.
Yeah, Brampton's got its unique challenges too. There are some tracks that need maintenance. These big trains do not help, because when these intermodals come in, they got to double them over or even triple them over depending on the size. So that eats up a lot of yard space. And then when you want to get them out of town, then you got to double them up again the other way. And it's always been a work in progress, and a bit of a challenge. But
we're going to get back to Vanless, but seeing as this is what's nice about the platform. This is an unscripted show, and the conversation is organic, and we never know what direction it's going to take. And that intermodal going by has led us into this conversation, and it's interesting. I've always wondered, and I'm sure the DPM helps mitigate this, but do you have a lot of downtime with trains trying to pump air 2 miles in the wintertime?
Yes and no. There are some provisions for, like some yards you'll see, like Mac Yard, and that they have ground air where they help for the brake tests and that, where they pre-charge the train, so it doesn't take so much time. There are repeater cars through the train. You'll see every once in a while, like a container or a box car with little blinky lights on it with a compressor. That's particularly helpful in the wintertime when it's cold, as the thermometer.
DPU must help too.
CN is just, in the last few
well.
years, CN came out with those box cars. They got compressors, those orange box cars.
Yeah.
And there's a compressor in those. And
Air
like I said,
car.
last winter I was in Edmonton, and they were all over the place. Every train had one of those somewhere in the train. And
it gets cold in Edmonton.
Yeah.
Very. It gets cold all across the prairies.
But anyway, they got these repeater cars, and then they've got containers that do the same thing. Every now and then they'll have a container that is an air repeater.
Air repeater.
Yeah. The DP units definitely do help for moving air through the train, not only to pump the air, but also to speed up the whole braking process of setting brakes, releasing brakes, stuff like that. So they do definitely help. having one mid-train. Again, CP runs, I've noticed CP runs sometimes multiple DPs through their train. Again, a lot has to do with it in terms of the terminals that the train operates through. Like BIT can handle a mid-train DP unit. If you were to do something like, multiple DP units, it might be a little bit more of a challenge. Yarding these big trains is also, I wouldn't say it's a little bit of an art form, but you got to kind of know what you're doing in terms of where you pull the train in, where you're going to make the cut. Usually, with CN, it seems to be the train pulls in, you cut the head end off ahead of the DP, you double the train over, and then you go back and pick up the DP and you head to the shop. So again, positioning of these DP units is helpful. A tail end DP, again, depends on how you're going to deal with the power.
Like we saw here.
Yeah,
on that last train.
Yeah, it's nice to have it on the tail end and that you got air, but the downside to it is there's nothing dragging that DP down. So when it starts to push, you got a whole train that it can push into, and that might cause a problem if you got a lot of empty well cars. So.
And now you were saying that DP is like the new van, but you were saying about the cabooses operation.
Yeah.
And there was a thing with like deadhead crews. We used to throw deadhead crews on the caboose and that, but they started throwing deadhead crews on the DP units, and the crews didn't like that because now you're in the middle of a train,
Oh, I see.
And then there was the thing where, you got a deadhead crew, and you're like, oh, let's get this guy going. You get him going, and then he stops again. Why does he stop? Oh, the deadhead crew's got to get off the back engine, or.
Yeah, because sometimes the DPs are marshaled cab trailing, so you got all the exhaust fumes from the locomotive seeping into the cab, and in the summertime, particularly tough if the unit doesn't have a working AC unit and you got to open a window. So yeah, crews have been known to get...
You got the old school air conditioning going.
Yeah.
The nose door and the back cab door.
Like I said, with the caboose, you got slack,
Yeah, it's far enough back.
But the DP units, I guess you get slack as well.
Yeah.
So but before it was like 5,000 feet, now you're 12,000 feet back.
Yeah. Since the advent of the distributed power units in Canada, as RTCs, have you noticed a slowdown or a lower percentage of drawbars and knuckles because of the slack mitigation? Or has the DPU added to that or helped that?
No, it definitely has helped. Again, the DP units, they work in conjunction with what's like CN's trip optimizers. So they do, it took a little bit of time to work all the bugs out. I'm sure they probably still have problems.
Because now you can help keep the train. I'm sure it helps mitigate slack at some point.
Yeah, it helps to reduce it. But again, then if your DP's pushing and your head end's braking, you're gonna...
still got to run in.
Yeah. So,
well, there's a place down here on the Kingston stuff. They call it the cruise called the Dangers. I think it's just around Brighton, Colborne area.
Yeah.
I remember being on the road trip there, and going along, we got this huge train just plodding along, and the engineer goes, you might want to hang on to your seat. And I'm like, why? And then he just went 3, 2, 1, and all of a sudden it went bang, and the slack ran because the track does this. So we're going down, and this part of the train's going up, and this part of the train's going, because the trains are so big that they're like a snake.
Like a roller coaster.
And he goes, there's nothing I can do, because if I try and prevent the slack coming in, I'm going to get a knuckle somewhere on this train. And like I said, the crews always called it the Dangers, because you're in danger of getting a knuckle. It's pretty much a knuckle alley.
While we're talking about these long trains, what other challenges have you noticed with the advent of the mile plus trains?
Well,
there's air problems.
If you do go in emergency, you end up in Southern Ontario, especially. It's pretty much unavoidable. You're going to block crossings, and then you end up in a town, such as Kingston or something like that. You're going to block 2 or 3 crossings. You got the whole town tied up. Yeah. So not only do we have to deal with the train, we have to make a call to the CM police, and then
they'll notify the
will notify the local authorities. This crossing's not available for ambulances or fire trucks, because it's like Murphy's Law. As soon as the train's blocking the crossing, the ambulance will show up.
Yeah.
So they got this procedure where we notify the CM police, and then they're like, well, how long is he going to be there? Well, how long's a piece of string? I don't know.
Yeah.
So
Till he's not.
Yeah.
He's there
Yeah.
till he's not. Yeah.
It presents a challenge. These big trains do present a challenge. With a little bit of care and planning, you can help minimize it. When something does go wrong, you try to fix the problem as quick as you can, and get everything moving. Each situation is a little unique in terms of location and what the circumstances are. Why did he go in emergency? Is it a drawbar knuckle? Is it a quick fix? Is it going to take a while?
Was it the seat hitting the handle in the second unit?
And it doesn't have to be in an emergency application either, because with the trackside scanners, it doesn't matter how long the train is. If a train gets scanned for dragging or hot, you still have to stop.
Yeah.
And you have the potential of tying up crossings.
Again, the location, and you have to take things like that into account. Is he going over through a control location? Is he going over through switches? Is there, dragging equipment involved, hot box? So you try to minimize this depending on where he is when you get the reading from the field that he's, where it is on the train. Can the train safely be stopped somewhere clear of crossings? You always try to aim for that, to minimize that kind of an inconvenience.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. So.
Well, dragging equipment, the crew is supposed to bring the train to a stop right then. Whereas, if you got a Hot Wheel, they can pull through, like the conductor could bail off and roll the train by, to
save them half the walk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, obviously if you get a knuckle, you've got no way, you've got to walk,
Yeah.
But dragging equipment, you don't know what's dragging, if anything. I mean, these vias are notorious in the winter for setting off every dragging equipment, because these LRC cars, the snow builds up underneath, and then they hit dragging equipment detector, and a big chunk of ice will fall off and hit the detector, and and they have to stop and check it out. And it's usually, in the winter, it's mostly, it must have been just some ice and on the move again, but they have to stop.
How big of a problem is winter with the modern signaling system and the throwing of track switches? I know there's heaters installed on a lot of them, but systems do fail. Does winter present a major challenge, or has the technology
it is
helped?
Sometimes it is. Again, depends on the severity of the winter. The conditions, are we talking snowstorm, freezing rain? There was a stretch where the railroads went to what they call cold air switch blowers, where they blow cold air. They've been known to pack snow into the points rather than help keep them clean. I think they've been slowly reverting back to heated switch blowers or switch melters. That helps.
Do you have control of those as an RTC?
Some are automatic. Some have sensors in them that detect snowflakes, and when you get snow, they automatically turn on. Some are still remotely controlled, where we can turn them on and run them. Like if you're up north, where like here in Toronto, a lot of them are tapped into natural gas mains, so they got a forever endless supply of fuel, so they'll never run out. So you can run them, we're encouraged to do that, like Metrolinx, where you just run them just to keep the switches clean. If it's snowing outside, if you're getting accumulation, just run them to keep the system going. Up north, where you have, propane tanks or natural gas tanks to fuel these, you have to be a little bit more conservative with your fuel. So if they've always told us, if you're going to use a siding for meat, turn the melters on like an hour in advance to clean them out.
And then turn the melters on the sidings on both sides where you think they're making the meat, just in case it goes south.
Yeah, providing the train
But with the
fits.
oversiding meats, it doesn't matter, because you can only make the meat at the oversiding.
Yeah.
But here's the thing Joe was saying, some of these ones, they came up with this system where they call it the snow cone. It was a sensor where it filled with snow, and they go, oh look, there's snow in here, turn on, automatically turn. So the crews used to think, we'll be smart, so we'll get off the engine and throw some snow into the snow cone.
I see.
But it would jam it up because it'd get icy.
Save them some broom time.
It wouldn't work.
Yeah, it takes a while to melt that snow down in the switch points. So
the railroad should be hiring curling enthusiasts,
But we used to
guys who don't mind sweeping.
You'd just crank on the snow melters, and then. But the downside with the propane ones is, in the fall, you end up with the propane truck out there, and basically what it is, it's a guy in a high rail truck with a tank car, like
A
an
brain
actual
truck
railroad,
towing a tank car, yeah.
loading, and he'll go along and fuel the melters, but he needs an exclusive TOP, which means they can't. Usually, you can have 3 foremen in a block or in a territory.
So that just
because
adds to
he's
your
got
day too.
So then, that's like
Yeah.
some other foreman will call up for his TOP. Sorry, this other foreman's got an exclusive, or the propane truck's ready to go, and there's a couple of foremen out there doing something.
Yeah.
You know.
This is something that a lot of rail fans and
Yeah.
model railroaders forget about, is that as a dispatcher or an RTC, it's not just trains that are occupying your track.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about some of the other regular members of the team that are out there.
That's the thing. As an RTC, you may not talk to a train crew all shift, but you will talk to maintainers and foremen, like track foremen. You know.
And there's all sorts of track units out there, depending on the time of the year. Wintertime, switch brooms, plows, track unit plows, guys trying to get around from one control location to another, clean switches. Not so big of a deal in multi-track territory where you got crossings all over the place, where sometimes if they got like a high rail truck, they can get on and off at a crossing. Other places where you have no crossings, they need to hold the track, whether it be a siding or wherever up north where you have very few crossings, a couple of foreman's crossings, and that's it. So you got to kind of plan as to who you let out, when you let out, and what they need to be out there for.
Here's a question I've always wondered about. If you take, say, a signal maintainer, and he's out on a high rail and he's doing a signal inspection, his truck is not going to activate track circuits normally,
Right.
crossing or block signals.
Right.
So as an RTC, what do you have at your disposal, either by way of paper or electronics, that keeps him protected out there blindly on the screen in his high rail truck? How do you handle that?
Well, a foreman, when he needs track time, he calls the RTC up, tells you who he is, identifies himself, the location where he is, and then he tells you what he needs for authority,
Miles so-and-so
for limits. It's between control locations, so he'll call you. In CTC and OCS you can pick single mileages, but he'll call you up, he'll ask you, this is who I am, where I'm going, what I need to do, and here's what I need for track. And then based on your trains and that, you can either accommodate them, or you got to tell them to wait until the train's clear. But for a foreman to get track time out there, it's not like the old train order lineup days where you just copy a lineup and then, put your motor car on and away you go type of thing. So nowadays, a lot of these high rails are heavy and they need a crossing to put on and take off on. So he needs a track occupancy permit. Whether it's OCS or whether it's CTC, and that basically, when a foreman gets that, the RTC gives them a track occupancy permit, which is written authority to occupy the track between locations.
So he copies this down?
He copies it down. You give it to him, he copies it down, reads it back to you, and if it's the correct repeat, then you give him a complete time in your initials, and that gives him authority until he cancels it.
But this authority is done in the computer.
Okay, that's what I'm getting at.
When he gives you that, you put on this CTC, you put from signal here to signal at control locations. First thing it does is put a blue line on your track line diagram.
Okay.
So basically, your track line diagram, if it's white, that's where the track is.
Yeah.
If it's green, that's the route you've chosen for a train. The red is a train. Blue
is blocking. But
so
you have two types. You have restrictive and you have permissive.
So
restrictive
the computer will put this blocking in before you even issue the TOP. That's his protection.
Okay.
Yeah.
So on your screen, you've got this big, beautiful blue line between A and B, and you can't put a train on him.
Right. The CTC system prevents you from lining anybody in there.
And that's where that CTC testing came in when they first developed this system, was trying to get it to fail. To make sure that stuff that you couldn't line a train into a block.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In the event of like a work train or an emergency, you can authorize the train into the limits of the foreman, but you got to issue the train crew a protect against that foreman. and then you have to give the train crew either a pass stop or a permissive signal. The RTC2 will let you line a signal into the foreman's limits after you have a protect against the foreman in there. So, and before they take that signal, they have to call the foreman up and say, yeah, this is train so-and-so, yada, yada, yada. I got a restriction protecting against you between here and there. And then they're governed by his instructions. When the foreman gives them instructions, then they can take the signal or whatever.
But it's the same as, say the crossing here, the bouncy crossing was defective, the gates were defective. Somebody calls it in, says, the first thing the RTC does is put in blocking.
Yeah.
You know, then you make sure, like if there's any trains in the block, you gotta let them know. Now, if there's a VIA train coming up here, you can just verbally tell them, if you can, stop and protect that crossing.
Yeah, if he's right on top of it.
But you're supposed to issue the GBO. So what you do in the blocking, you'd type in defective crossing, mile, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, you can't let a train. Now you've got to give every train that GBO until that crossing is fixed. You give them the bullet and tell them stop and manually protect it. After you've done that, you can give them the signal into that block. It's an RTC protection. But there's also like a restrictive blocking, like a TOP, that will not let anything go in unless it's got an authority. So, like Joe was saying, you can give a train permission to protect against them. It's kind of like a Rule 42, where a Rule 42 is a bulletin. The foreman just puts up his flags at the end of his territory. The train cannot go through there. Is not supposed to go through there without instructions from the foreman. Basically what you're doing is, say the foreman's working here and all he's doing is a little bit of work. You've got a 10-mile block, but he's just doing a little bit of work here.
Yeah, on 100 feet of track.
Yeah, and it's 9.5 miles away.
Yeah.
Well, we'll let this guy in, and then he can talk to him and tell him, come up to here and stop.
Yeah.
At least you've gone 9 miles further. This new RTC2 system that CN has lets you do that. And the old system, you couldn't do that.
Yeah, it wouldn't
allow. It was
allow.
just like, sorry, there's a block there. So they've made changes, and as time's gone by, upgraded it. You know.
Is there a hierarchy of movements in terms of people wanting to occupy the track? In other words, are there times where you have to tell a foreman, I'm sorry, it's going to be 4 hours before I can even talk to you,
Yeah.
and he has to deal with it? Or do you have to make every possible allowance for him to do his thing? How's that hierarchy work?
There's a limit as to how many foremen you can have, how many authorities you can have on one piece of track. So usually,
piece of track as a block?
Yeah, as a block. So if you have one foreman out there, if you need to move a train through the limits, you only are allowed to have one foreman out there. So if you have multiple foremen, the system will allow you to have 3 foremen in a block, protecting against each other. It's not a free-for-all. They all have to talk to each other.
But then again, like there's planned work blocks where they got a tie gang coming through. In summer, you'll see this all the time.
We had that here in the summer.
That's planned.
They did the ties.
They know weeks ahead of time that this tie gang is coming along, so they'll tell us and they'll say they're gonna get, after this train goes through, they'll hold trains maybe in Montreal, set back their times so they don't get up here. The North End is famous for these work blocks where they'll hold trains at Hornpayne, Cape Pearl, wherever. And then, okay, now the work block's 3 hours away, so 3 hours before they're supposed to be finished, we'll get these trains loaded up and going. And these work trucks are supposed to be clear.
Yeah.
So that's planned work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In answer to your question, it depends on the requirements or who needs to get out there. There's track patrols, which have some importance. The track has to be patrolled on a regular schedule every couple of days. Then there's emergent conditions where you have to go out there and fix something like a broken rail or something like that. Yeah. So again, it's the RTC's job to prioritize who goes out and when. And again,
and you have that autonomy to make that call.
Yeah, usually what you do is you clear with the chief. You let the chief know, and okay, I got so and so. He's going to go out and fix this broken rail or whatever. So he'll obviously get precedent over somebody that's just going to do some maintenance.
But then again, if you got a broken rail on the North End, the foreman says it's going to take me an hour to fix it, and there's nothing. You go ahead. It's 2 hours.
Yeah.
Give him track time for 2 hours, whatever.
Yeah. But getting back to our scenario of our friend the signal maintainer in the high rail truck that just wants to go from
That blue
mileage to
protects
mileage with that blue mark.
Yeah.
Are there times where he may have to sit for an hour
Yeah.
at that crossing where he wants to put on
Yeah.
and just wait because
Yeah, if
you've got trains to move?
Yeah, usually you got trains coming, like a via train, a passenger train, or a freight train that's short on time, or has got no place to clear because he's too big crossings. So, yeah,
Southern Ontario is great because you just back up to that crossing and get off.
yeah,
Northern Ontario,
it's the north.
you don't have a crossing for 45 miles.
Yeah.
You know, and in the winter, just duck in the siding. Well, I can't because my truck is only this far off the rail and there's this much snow because we haven't run a train through that siding in a week.
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, can you get in the backtrack? I can't even find the backtrack. These guys, you know, so now you've got a different scenario where sometimes you have to use that. Say you can get the foreman just clear of the track in the switch, but he's still on the track. Then you give him the train to protect against him.
Yeah.
And sneak him by, you know, just as long as everybody's protected.
Yeah.
You know.
That's the name of the game. We didn't get our conversation in about vanless trains, and I think maybe we'll pick that up, and maybe we'll talk on our Station House audio series sometime about that. Before we go, I just want to spend 5 or so minutes. Each of you are professional railroaders. Both of you are rail fans, and both of you are model railroaders. Talk to me about what that looks like at work.
Well, in terms of work, back in the old days, operators' jobs, when you're in the middle of nowhere with absolutely nothing to do, there's no trains on the lineup, and you're just killing time. Yeah, it's been known that, to pull out something to keep yourself busy and preoccupied. An idle mind sometimes could be a dangerous mind, so you always want to keep active and keep busy. I mean, I was working one day up in Lake Travers, and it was a real quiet day, nothing going on. So I said, well, I'm here in the office, so if the dispatcher needs me, they always ring you up anyway, or they call you. So I pulled out a couple of model kits, and I started working on them. And halfway into it, one afternoon, the superintendent walks in with the new train master and told to introduce them.
It smells like Tester's cement.
Why do I smell Solvasec?
Yeah, what's going on here? Dave, how about you?
The same way. I didn't really do models, but I have been known to label up my slides at work, you know.
Yeah.
Back in the day, have all these piles of slides over the...
Other than working with each other, did you ever just organically come across other rail fans or model railroaders at work that maybe... It's like a secret society almost?
Well, I like I said, in the previous episode there, I found out about the job at Conrail because of the guys at the station that were rail fans that I used to hang out with.
Yeah.
So, it was a bit taboo back then. You know, if you were a rail fan, you took pictures. You know, they used to look like
they frowned upon it.
Yeah.
A lot of guys were a little uncomfortable with somebody hanging around with the camera because it's like, okay, what kind of trouble am I going to get into?
I remember this one yard master in Windsor. He said, you go out taking pictures, blah, 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 blah. And then when he retired, he goes, hey, Dave, he says, do you have a picture of the old 7438? I'd love to get a... I'm like, Larry, I thought you thought it was stupid me taking train pictures. Now you want me to make you a print?
How do you like me now?
Yeah.
Any model railroaders at Metrolinx, Joe?
There's not wanting to get anybody in trouble, but there's
names.
2 or 3 people that are into the hobby. That,
We don't need names.
Rail fans.
Some people collect train stuff. There are some people that are rail fan and that. Yeah, I think every industry it rubs off on people. So there are. I mean, those days of being able to work on stuff at work are long gone. Nowadays, dispatching jobs are very intense, very busy.
Yeah.
You don't have the time for those distractions, and they are frowned upon. But yeah, in their spare time, there are people that are in the hobby, and I think in one, it used to be frowned upon. I'm not quite sure how companies look at it nowadays, but it is definitely, if you have somebody that's got a keen interest on both railroading and that reflects on their hobby and influences their hobby, sometimes it could be a good thing,
And that's how I look at it. I've always thought that if you're passionate about something and your heart's really into something and it's not just a proverbial paycheck, that you're probably going to be as proficient or possibly more proficient at it as the guy who's just there to put his 40 hours in and go home.
I had a supervisor at CP once. I was at, I don't know what, some kind of meeting there, and he goes, "Yeah, I'd never hire a train buff. Those guys are useless." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. He's a train buff."
Yeah, there's five guys. There's five guys in this room that wouldn't
Yeah.
have jobs. Yeah, guys, thank you very much for braving the cold. A little bit of snow here on the platform today. That's wonderful.
Put the melters on.
Yeah, turn on the melters for the meat. I think we should go into the station and have ourselves a hot coffee. And for those of you who are at home enjoying this show from the warmth of your armchair by your fireplace, thank you so much for tuning in. If you want more Platform, you can go to Spotify, download the app onto your tablet, your smartphone, or your laptop, and you can download the Platform, the Station House audio series, all unique content, all unique guests, and that'll give you more Platform to enjoy from the warmth of your armchair or from the warmth of your car on your commute to work. I'm Bob Fallowfield. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on the Platform.